Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Patreon podcast. This week, I wanted to talk about the idea that it's okay to start over. This comes mostly from my 2-hour track challenge things, but also from some of the larger projects that I've worked on in the past, where I realize that it's just not going in the direction that I want, and I think that it's time to start over. This goes a little bit back to what we were talking about last week, relating to seeds and sprouts, and kind of pushing a little farther than you think you really need to go to see if you can cultivate an idea into something worthwhile. But if you can't, if you have put in that little extra effort and it's still not going the direction you want, I think that it's completely valid to realize that it's time to just scrap that project and start over. And if you think there are good ideas in that project, feel free to save it and stuff and just kind of archive it. But there are definitely times where I'm working on something and I just realize it's not vibing with me. So I just Control N and I just start over, because it's more important to use your time in ways that you think are valuable. And I think that working on a doomed project is just really deflating. I've definitely done a lot of that in my time. And I think that it's important not only to realize when that is happening, but to have the strength to actually just start over and kind of take the hit for that time loss, whether it's an hour or a couple days. Hopefully you learned something through that process. But I think there's a lot of strength in realizing that you just need to start over on something and actually taking that step to start over. And maybe you can bring some elements over from the old song into the new one, and that's completely valid too. But I think that it's just really important to realize that when something isn't going in the direction you like, it's okay to just not work on it anymore. And I've done that with music. I've done that with games. I've done that with woodworking projects in the shed. There's a couple of things that I started that I just haven't finished because I either didn't have the right idea or I realized I made a mistake, and it's just I don't want to start over on all this. So I just kind of abandon it. And that happens. I think that the important part is that you learned something through that process. And especially when you're doing stuff digitally, if you can identify why you don't like it, or you can identify what's wrong with this specifically, you can take that knowledge into your future projects and realize that you're not going to go in that direction for the future projects. And that will ultimately make your future projects better. Hopefully you can learn something from these failed projects. And again, failed isn't a bad thing. Failed just means that it wasn't realized into a full thing, and you learned something from it, and just learning something is valuable. So yeah. I don't know, this is a bit of a shorter one compared to the last couple episodes, but I really wanted to just reinforce the idea that it's okay to abandon a project and it's okay to start over. Probably once a month or once every other month during the 2-hour track challenge, which is to say one out of every 8 or 9 songs that I write, I'm just nah, this isn't working. And I just kind of start over. Same thing with the album in a month thing in November. I think I started of the 10 songs that are currently released, I think 3 or 4 of them I started. I'm just man, this isn't going the way I wanted to. So I just kind of put them off to the side. At some point I might revisit them, and I might take them and turn them into solo or EPs or singles or whatever. But as it stands right now, it just didn't work for me, especially for the project. And working with those limited parameters is also a really big challenge. 'Cause with the solo album I was working on, I had very specific parameters for what I wanted it to sound like. And I mean, you probably know me well enough where I have the idea of what I want to do, and what actually happens doesn't always go the same way. And some of the songs that I started writing kind of veered in a direction that didn't fit the tone of the album. And I'm just well, I like this, but I don't want to work on it anymore because I'm investing my time in a specific tone. And for some reason, in 2020, The Moon Seems Unaffected, that album came together so easily. And maybe it was because the limitations I had set myself were so rigid, and I knew what I had to do. I just needed to sit down and put in the work. It's entirely possible that that's what the cause was there. So there's something to explore there too. Yeah, I need to look into that more, because I really love that album. That might still be the best album I ever wrote, and I'm very proud of it. But in the meantime, I just want to reinforce the idea that it's okay to scrap a project, and it's okay to start over. The time spent doing it doesn't mean that you wasted that time. It just means that you invested that time in something that, isn't going to see the light of day, but you still learned something, and learning something from that project is still very, very important. So I managed to double the length of this after I said goodbye. So I'm going to say goodbye again. As always, thank you so much for being a supporter on Patreon. I really genuinely do appreciate it. I hope that you have a fantastic Friday and a wonderful weekend, and I will talk to you in the next one. Be remarkable.